Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So we have a new receiver for the Flysky MB4 Ranger radios or any of the AFHDS3 ones. We've got a tiny little micro receiver and this is the GMr-C3. It's even smaller than the existing micro receiver they do. And they've done away with the port to plug the gyro in, but it does have solder pads in case you want to fit a gyro to it as well. So let's bring in for a close-up look and see what we get with this. So here we have the new receiver. It comes in the anti-static packaging. So as I say, this is the GMr-C3 micro receiver. And just to give you an idea of how much smaller this is the standard GMR. So it's considerably shorter in lengthwise. And it looks like it's even narrower. Height-wise is the same because of the actual plug sockets used. I do prefer this more flexible antenna, and it is stuck down to make sure that it's not gonna snap off, which you could do with this antenna. It's just soldered on. It would be easy to get this flexing about on the original GMR. We do have a smaller bind button by the looks of it, so that tiny little mark, I'm not sure if you can see it or how well you'll see it, but this tiny little mark is the actual bind button. So you can press that to get it into bind and update mode. But we do have channels 1 to 3, and thankfully it does come with 3 of the little micro plugs. I think these are JST 1.5 off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure. But they are keyed, so they'll only go in one way. So you've got all your negatives at one side, then your positive, then your signal. So looking on the instructions, let's see if I can dig out some info for you. So wiring wise, if we stick his little receiver that way round, so from this side we have channels 1, 2 and 3. Your signal pins are the ones towards the edge, then your positive, then your negative. If we look at the actual gyro, so the first solder pad is SCL, your second solder pad is SDA, and then you've got positive and negative. And it will work with the Flysky GY01, which is a tiny little gyro module. And it is labelled on the actual module itself, SCL, SDA, and then VCC and ground. And it does line up exactly the same as it is on this tiny little receiver. Looks like they've fitted quite a lot of components into such a small space. We do, right on the side here, have an LED so you can see operation. And as I say, that's the tiny little bind button. So a bit of more information on it. So it's got 3 PWM channels. It's AFHDS3. Distance, it says more than 50 meters on ground without interference. Resolution is 4096. We do have a silicon coated antenna. The voltage range it'll operate from is 3.5 to 9 volt. So should cover pretty much anything that you want to cover in the minis. The receiver supports two-way binding. The transmitter will display information returned from the receiver after two-way binding is finished. Therefore, you need to set the one-way or two-way binding on the transmitter side before you start to bind. If you're binding one way, you have to tell it to bind, then just back out. It doesn't get the confirmation. If you're binding two-way, it'll say binding complete. So binding is the normal press and hold the button and then let go and it'll put it into bind mode. And if you do power the receiver up and it's not been bound, you can just press and hold the bind button for 3 seconds and it should start flashing and go into bind mode. Receiver LED is solid after binding, so you don't have to guess whether it's bound or not, even if you're binding one way. So as for updating the firmware, it says the firmware update for this receiver must be completed through Flysky Assistant. Really nice that we've got a new version of Flysky Assistant, so hopefully that won't cause too many problems for people. It's only supported on version 3 and higher, which we're already on that anyway. First method is to complete the binding between the transmitter and receiver. LED should be solid, then connect the transmitter to the computer, open Flysky Assistant and go through firmware update. Method 2, connect your transmitter, follow the steps to put the receiver into forced update mode. The LED will operate 3 flashes, 1 off and then repeat. And to get it into forced update mode, you just keep the button held down until the flash pattern changes. So yeah, all pretty standard stuff. For forced update mode, it's basically hold the power button for, hold the little bind button for more than 10 seconds. And then it'll do 3 flashes and then 1 off and keep repeating. It's a different pattern to what you get with the bind mode. And then you can connect it to Assistant and update it that way. But yeah, very interesting little receiver. Nice to have more options. It really is tiny, and I think it'd be a great choice for something along the lines of the Micro B, especially with such limited space under there. So I will do a video on fitting it and show you how to bind it up, try it with multiple transmitters and see how we get on with it. But yeah, so far, cracking little addition. The gyro pads are on both sides, so it does give you more options of how you solder to it. Not really sure how many people are going to use a gyro on this. Certainly not in sort of the Micro B, but possibly if you're running sort of a mini Z on-road drift type car and you do want a tiny little micro receiver for the 1/24, 1/28 scales. Certainly be useful in some of the little rock crawlers. You do have an extra channel, so you've got throttle steering and then an extra channel. If you want more channels, there's always the original GMR. But yeah, that's the new Flysky GMr-C3. Tiny little micro receiver for all the MB4 radios. Possibly also work on the PL18, PL18 EV. Maybe we'll have to give that a try. But let's wrap this one. So there we have it, the tiny little GMr-C3. Nice that it comes with 3 of these cables already made up, and they are really nice soft flexible cable. I have used one of these on the Micro B on the servo from one of the original GMR receivers when I set it up on that, and it's pretty easy to solder to this stuff as well, which is nice. But yeah, hopefully you find that useful, entertaining, or just like listening to my incessant ramblings. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share to friends and family, and catch you guys again in the next one.